Let's go to the overseas line. On the overseas line, good morning.
Good morning, Darrell.
Good morning.
Well, you started off the show with a bang. And I know we don't have much time this morning, but it's important to note that the Financial Times and PricewaterhouseCoopers, two credible international organizations, are behind these index reports. And these reports are not published by or on behalf of the government of Dominica. And you will notice as well the inclusion this time of legal opinions and so on. But we can deal with that another time. Comrade, I share your view about Herbert Winston, who I have respect for. But I think Herbert either embarrassed himself or insulted himself for cheap political gain by seeking to suggest that Linton and him are about the same. Or for that matter, that you could compare my father, who started with nothing and ended up with quite a bit, as did Egbert Charles and Rupert, Mr. Rudolph Thomas and Mr. Anderson Jolly. Men who have dedicated their life through hard work to move from nothing to achieve considerable amount of self-worth and capital worth and so on, and at the same time making significant contributions to the country. Where does Linton fit into that category? God only knows. Herbert Winston will have to tell us what motivated him to drag the extraordinary career of my father, Egbert Charles, Rudolph Thomas, and Anderson Cooper into the gutter with Linton. I mean,
Anderson
really
Jolly.
Jolly, sorry. I want to know how that happened. How that happened? How do you compare a man who, unlike the days when Egbert and my father and Rudolph Thomas went to school, would have wanted to go to school or went to school, where opportunities were severely limited, and especially for tertiary education. You had to be a planter class son or grandson to get there, or a Shillingford or one of these big-name people who controlled the country at the time. When Linton was going to school, the opportunities was wide as the Windsor Park. And the point is that having been expelled from the grammar school, he did absolutely nothing to enhance and to educate himself. He turned those of my father's generations were denied opportunities because opportunities did not exist, or funds and scholarships and assistance from government were not available. Linton's dad was a senator in the Dominica Freedom Party. There's nothing that could have prevented him from getting assistance to get a higher education. Nothing. They were both teachers. They had access to opportunities to give him an education, and that never happened. And education is important. Those are going on social media and speaking about, well, education not that important. Comrade, let me tell you something. Governments do not spend millions of dollars building schools, passing education laws to make education compulsory, building state colleges, and spending $20, $30, $40 million on scholarships, making loans available at 1 or 2% at the aid bank because education is like going to a fete or going to a disco. It's serious business. Education is your vehicle to development and out of poverty, as this fellow said at the Maho town hall meeting. All right? But the point that Mr. Gregory Revere and the Honorable Prime Minister was making on Sunday is not just the lack of education and the failure and the refusal of Linton to educate himself, but as Gregory Revere said, when I was working in the constituency, where were you? And Gregory Revere listed 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 things that he was doing for the benefit of the people of Marigot. And Linton was not around. He just wasn't there. And I heard Clarence Chris just mention Pierre Charles. there's some eulogies and things printed in the international media about Pierre Charles. Went to school, trained at the technical training college to teach, teacher. But he had a massive social, political, economic presence in the constituency of Granby and in the country. He was a force to be reckoned with before he entered politics and afterwards. So that was the track record. The track record that Pierre Charles had is the track record that Gregory and the Honorable Prime Minister were saying does not exist. None. There's no social work before politics, and Daryl, it got worse after politics. When Gregory Revere, eyewitness testimony from the platform, says that after Maria, we never saw Linton. I had to be the one going into the communities to help people. And since I became the candidate, or I accepted the invitation to be a candidate for the Dominica Labour Party, I, and I'm interpreting his words, have done more for the people of Marigot than Edison James and Lennox Linton combined. So that's also part of the record. So if you don't have the educational skills and competence and qualification, then you must transform it into social work and participation in the constituency. That has never happened. Point two. They say Linton was the president of the Dominica Association of Industry and Commerce. That is true. But he didn't earn the right to be there. He was given the privilege of being there because he was representing DCP on the board. And DCP was then, anyone who represented DCP would have been able to get the position of president for obvious reasons. But the most important point when we're looking at, well, you don't have education, you don't have community service, you were not a cadet, you were not a scout, you never did any committee to assist the people of the country constituency. You got 2 scholarships for your family, none for Marigot. But what is your job routine like? This is a man that said that he sent hundreds of applications to the very members of the Dominica Association of Industry and Commerce, Daryl. And not one of them acknowledged his application for a job. The very same people that he would have sat for lunches at DIC at Fort Young or met at meetings or would have met at social events were not prepared to even acknowledge his applications. And then you say, well, okay, so what about before they would not accept his applications? What was his, well, Dame Eugenia Charles didn't think he was fit to run DBS. Kanner refused to renew his contract. He was fired at Mappin. He was fired from Observer Radio, and he was fired by the great company that he keeps saying that he was a part of, which is the Colgate Palmolive, formerly DCP. Oh, I see. So you don't have education. You have no presence in Marigot. You have no track record of community service, like the other great leaders, like the other leaders we've had in the past. But you've had the most firings, comrade, the most firings before the DAIC members refused to acknowledge your applications. Really? Well, then there's something wrong with you, boss man. Look in the mirror. And then what about post-applications jobs? Well, who did he work for? Well, let's take a guess. Edison James goes to Switzerland, comes back with $3 million. At the time, he and Lennox were Abbott and Costello going to St. Kitts on behalf of Henley and Partners. Linton is in the front line of that campaign, funded by friends of Henley and Partners. 2009, SEL, sent by Cambridge Analytica, is managing the campaign for the United Workers' Party. Linton is on the front line. Draw the inference. Then Dr. Douglas tells me that SEL hired Linton to work in the 2010 election campaign in St. Kitts. Stevenson King told me Linton was in the campaign in 2011, but not paid by the United Workers' Party, but he was working in the campaign. Draw your inference. Well, what sort of job was that? Who was he working for? You know, Daryl, you only have an hour. Hello?
No, no, no.
Wake up.
That's tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow you have the hour.
Mm-hmm.
Man,
Yes.
well, let me open up the gearbox. Okay, a few more minutes. I soon finish. So you look at that, and you say, well, most firings, members of DIC not accepting your application. Then you end up working for people who a British House of Commons committee investigation said were fully participating in corruption, dishonesty, and fraudulent campaign tactics. Well, is that part of his CV that we had to look at for him as political leader fit for the position of prime minister? Then we say, well, let us look at what he's done since he's been political leader of the United Workers' Party. Let me give you his record card and take a pen and give me his marks. Linton and the United Workers' Party objected to Yes We Care, the pit latrine eradication, the pre- and post-Maria housing revolution, scholarships for the young people, public assistance program, the increase in pensions for the elderly, the construction of the hotels and the houses under the CBI. I see. The things that are being done for the benefit of the working people of this country, you have a philosophical, personal difficulty with. All right. But let's see what else you have on your track record. Because Gregory Revere says you have nothing. Well, maybe we should call him subversive in chief, Darren. Based on what you read in the introduction of your show this morning about the great position Dominica is in the eyes of the international community, the CBI program. We have a man that has gone on CBS, Huffington Post, and every single opportunity he has had, including in the parliament in the last budget debate, to demonize, undermine, and subvert the integrity of the Citizenship by Investment project. So the average voter now is on the bus stop waiting for the bus to pass, hearing me saying, they say, well, if we didn't have that CBI after Erica, and if we did not have that CBI access to the revenues after Maria, we would be, as Tim Hector says, in deep to-do. And here is this man doing his best to sabotage the government's ability to reconstruct Dominica, to rebuild a dead and destructive Dominica, doing his best to subvert it. Okay, so no education, no track record, most firings, applications, not even up for jobs, not even acknowledged, working with SCL, objected to the Yes We Care pit latrine that meant a great deal to the people of Marigot, and then subversive in chief. Well, let me see if I can give him a better grade. Liar in chief. Confirmed a liar by 2 High Court judges and the Privy Council because of allegations he's made. Well, I think that's a very good track record for an all-rounder. And the consequence of one of these judgments is a petition for bankruptcy having been filed against him. All right, well, that's not enough to think. Well, let's go with insulter in chief. Prostitutes, rapists, greedy, mendicants, beggars. That's part of the CV of the man who wants to continue in Marigot and be elected as prime minister. So you see, Mr. Herbert Winston is not just the education. You insulted my father. He insulted my father by drawing a comparison with Lennox Linton. I cannot speak for the other families mentioned, but as a citizen of this Dominica, I would feel embarrassed to have my father, who has spent all of his years creating a significant contribution to the economies and the social life and sports in this country, to have him, whether it's Egbert Charles, Rudolph Thomas, or Mr. Jolly, compared to Lennox Linton. So it's not just that. All right, then let's go to the temperament. Prime ministers need temperament. Roosevelt Skerritt has the temperament of an iceberg. The man doesn't lose his cool, doesn't lose his temper, always focused. This is probably where Linton will have an edge. Oh, no, that's not it. Shouts at Kamala, storms out of a radio program on DBS, slams the phone on Keisha because they're asking, women are asking him questions. Francine Barron, Minister Barron, says to him, Stop misleading the people at the National Council and consultation, and in the presence of the bishop or the bishop's representative, he tells the minister to shut up. Then he goes and he sings songs about throwing stones about the police. Then in the middle of the riots of the 7th of February 2017, and I'll say no more than that, the leader of the opposition is there taking pictures and videos. All right, Mr. Sukie, tell me now, how does the lack of education not be a major problem in the light of all the things we know about Lennox Linton? Tell me. I would be very happy to know, and I would be very happy to say education by itself is not an issue. V.C. Byrd became Prime Minister, but he was a captain in the Salvation Army. He was a great trade union leader. He mobilized the people against colonialism. He broke the backs of the plantations. He worked hard to liberate people, black people in Antigua. He led marches. They refused to eat certain things. They had this thing about weedy weeks and so on. Pierre Charles had a commitment that was revolutionary to this country and to his communities. Sukie, what does he have? What has Linton done? And why would you embarrass yourself by saying, well, education doesn't really matter? It may not have mattered then, where opportunities were limited to the very few of the planter class and the mercantile class. But a man of my age and a man of Linton's age cannot speak of denials of opportunities. And yes, Mr. Sukie, I can tell you his failure to properly educate himself, to familiarize himself with basic principles of economics and governance is a major problem, because that is part of the reason why Linton's incapacity to comprehend and to be competent on fundamental issues is what is triggering his anger outbursts and his constant pathological tendencies to lie. Mr. Winston, the man is a dangerous threat to our democracy, and I do not know what beef you have with the government or any institution or company owned with the government, but I thought it was embarrassing for you to come out and try to defend Lennox Linton with the track record that he has when he's called people in this country prostitutes and so on and so on and so on. Daryl, thank you for the opportunity for me to say this morning. I felt that Sukie embarrassed and insulted my father's record, and I felt I had to respond to it in as full an opportunity and a fuller way as I possibly could, and I want to thank you for that. And let me just say this to Mr. Winston. Mr. Winston, Linton is no Egbert Charles. He's no Rudolph Thomas. He's no Anderson Jolly, and he's no Wadi Astaphan. And I think you should be embarrassed and ashamed of yourself to try to suggest that he is. You have a good day.
Thank you very much, comrade. Thank you for your contribution. Thank you for your contribution. Thank you for your contribution.